Podcast 105. Is there a symbiotic relationship existing between culture and DNA? ISBN 9781 63848 3038 is also featured in Publication 200. Human DNA, the molecule of inheritance, carries the entire set of instructions for making a complete person from a single fertilized egg. The mind and culture are living phenomena sprung from genetics. This view is espoused in Promethean Fire Reflections on the Origin of Mind, written by Charles J. Lumsden and Edward O. Wilson. Historically, explanation has been associated with causation, and in an attempt to explain the positive theory, is there a symbiotic relationship existing between culture and DNA? This seems to be a phenomenon that identifies its cause. This positive theoretical question statement is an analyzed nuance which becomes a conversation about DNA and culture, is composed and framed through my lens as an author, student of film, media arts specialist, licensed cultural practitioner, and publisher. Of note, contextually speaking, the mind and culture are living phenomena sprung from genetics, according to Richard M. Ristack of the New York Times. This expression implies some type of symbiotic relationship is existing between culture and DNA. The frame statement is part of the ethos on which culture seemingly thrives or lives. Metaphorically, we global citizens are repositories, conduits, whereby gifts, information, and thoughts flow. Hence, culture and the mind are an inseparable nuance. TheGuardian.com has reported through its lens that CRISPR-Cas9 technique of editing DNA is, by the standards of earlier methods, astonishingly quick and easy. It is not entirely reliable or accurate, but it places enormous potential power in the hands of ordinary scientists. In 1859, Charles Darwin published The Origin of Species, changing the way many people viewed the world forever. 1831, Darwin had joined a 5-year scientific expedition. During his time away, was influenced by Lyell's suggestion that fossils found in rocks were evidence of animals that had lived millions of years ago. The breakthrough came when he noticed that the Galapagos Islands each supported its own variety of finch, which were closely related but had slightly differences that seemed to have adapted in response to their individual environments. A cultural DNA is a collection of genetic instructions used in the growth, development, functioning, and reproduction of any culture. Whenever a group of people are together, they form a culture. According to David Roth, so what is culture at a company, and when does it start developing? A company's culture begins with its founders, what they believe in, what they value, and how they work. According to Macmillan Dictionary, 60 years ago this week, the journal Nature published Francis Crick and James Watson's groundbreaking paper on deoxyribonucleic acid, which described for the first time the double helix shape of the DNA molecule. As often happens with scientific and technical vocabulary, the term DNA soon broke out of the specialized field in which it originated and began to be seen in newspaper articles about genetics and similarly general texts. More recently, it has taken a further step into the mainstream by acquiring a metaphorical use. We say that a particular characteristic or talent is in someone's DNA or part of their DNA as a way of emphasizing that this is a fundamental aspect of their nature and unlikely ever to change. We read, for example, of a British conservative politician that Euroscepticism is stamped in his DNA, or that the Boston Red Sox are the baseball team that is a part of the city's DNA. The DNA metaphor is especially favored by organizations seeking to promote a positive corporate image. If your mission statement claims that some desirable quality is part of your DNA, that's a lot more impressive than simply saying that it's something you are committed to. Human DNA, the molecule of inheritance, carries the entire set of instructions for making a complete person from a single fertilized egg. So once James Watson and Francis Crick revealed its structure, the stage was set for 50 years of world-changing discoveries. In honor of that tight-knit package of 23 pairs of chromosomes, Steve Connor highlights 23 of the most significant breakthroughs. Satoshi Kanazawa believes that human behavior, while malleable, is not infinitely malleable by culture, because culture is not infinitely variable. In fact, despite all the surface and minor differences, evolutionary psychologists have shown that all human cultures are essentially the same. Cultural evolution is an evolutionary theory of social change. It follows from the definition of culture as information capable of affecting individuals' behavior that they acquire from other members of their species through teaching, imitation, and other forms of social transmission. Cultural evolution is the change of this information over time. What about cultural DNA? According to Gogin.com, a cultural DNA is a collection of genetic instructions used in the growth, development, functioning, and reproduction of any culture. Whenever a group of people are together, they form a culture. The group establishes some unwritten rules, called norms, and the members start to develop a common set of values that over time defines how things are done in that particular group. DNA technology is a relatively new area of research with enormous controversy. It will likely continue to be a large part of public debate and have an impact on every aspect of medical diagnostics, therapeutics, forensics, and genetic profiling. DNA technology has revolutionized modern science. Deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, or an organism's genetic material inherited from one generation to the next, holds many clues that have unlocked some of the mysteries behind human behavior, disease, evolution, and aging. As technological advances lead to a better understanding of DNA, new DNA-based technologies will emerge. Recent advances in DNA technology, including cloning, PCR, recombinant DNA technology, DNA fingerprinting, gene therapy, and DNA profiling have already begun to shape medicine, forensic science, environmental sciences, and national security. At the end of the day, the theoretical question, is there a symbiotic relationship existing between culture and DNA? According to Gogin.com, a cultural DNA is a collection of genetic instructions used in the growth, development, functioning, and reproduction of any culture. Whenever a group of people are together, they form a culture. The group establishes some unwritten rules called norms, and the members start to develop a common set of values that over time defines how things are done in that particular group. This conversation was composed and framed in 9 chapters, 390 pages, and verbalized in ISBN 9781 63848 3038.